Hello there. In this video, I'm actually going to cover a fairly hotly debated topic in the RuneScape PVM community, and it's whether you should use full manual or revolution. I'm going to try to make the case that for a lot of PVMers, not all of them, but for a lot of them, they should actually use revolution, because I believe it will make most of their PVM life quite a lot easier. I have looked on a lot of the videos on YouTube, and many of them believe that full manual is just superior to revolution in every way, but I actually don't believe so. And I'm going to try to convince you in this video that revolution has a place in PVM. Not everywhere, but it has a place in PVM. I just ask that you watch the video with an open mind, and hopefully we all can learn something about the two styles together. I am make a disclaimer in that I don't believe that people who are good at using full manual should switch back to using revolution. But I don't believe that people who are using revolution should necessarily switch to full manual automatically, because I actually think for most people who would be thinking about it, they actually would not really benefit. Before we discuss the pros and cons of using revolution and using full manual, I'm going to explain what each of them actually do. So, full manual gives you full access and full control of every ability that you have. You activate your abilities by using keybinds and or clicking on abilities, and it is up to you to trigger every ability that your character uses. With revolution, it's a little different in that there is a yellow rectangle that contains a bunch of abilities. All the abilities you can put in this yellow rectangle will be used prioritized from the left abilities to the right abilities. Now, if you put threshold and ultimate abilities in this yellow rectangle, you will need to make sure that you check the box for automatically trigger threshold abilities and automatically trigger ultimate abilities in order to actually automatically use these abilities. But I highly recommend not using threshold and ultimate abilities automatically, and I highly recommend making sure that you use them under your control and only your control. Here's some example gameplay of me attacking a combat dummy with the full manual combat style. I am pressing hotkeys to activate abilities in order to activate any ability my character wants to use. If I don't do this every global cooldown, my character will auto-attack, and auto-attacks do significantly less damage. Now, there is ways to force auto-attacks into your DPS rotation that don't really lose any time, but that's not covered in this video today. If I don't use abilities for a long time and only stand there, my character will auto-attack once in a while, but it will auto-attack more frequently if I use a faster weapon. However, the auto-attacks will be weaker individually if I do so. Now here is some gameplay of me using revolution. The major difference is when I'm not actually inputting any abilities to use, revolution is still automatically triggering abilities every global cooldown. The biggest advantage that's immediately obvious is I get to use significantly fewer inputs, and I can still use a lot of good abilities in that revolution will prioritize the abilities that are further to the left, which you normally put your better abilities towards anyway. It's important to note that with this style, I only have to activate my threshold and ultimate abilities, and revolution nicely takes care of all my basic abilities. I'm going to cover what are commonly considered the pros and cons of each combat method. With full manual, the biggest advantage by far is you get full control over all of your abilities. This should allow you to generally have more optimized rotations. The content would be potentially more engaging if you like trying to do the best rotations you can, and to stop attacking, all you need to do is stop pressing buttons to use more abilities. For the disadvantages though, it requires input every ability. You cannot use an ability on full manual without pressing an input to call that ability. It also requires monitoring of every cooldown, because you have to keep track of the cooldowns yourself. Revolution doesn't do that for you. And then also it can take away attention from boss mechanics or other things you need to put attention to, such as prayer switches, weapon switches, or any other things you need to pay attention to. For Revolution, the main advantage is actually it simplifies combat for you. It manages the cooldowns for you, so you don't have to think about that, and you do not also have to worry about making sure you always have an ability going off, because Revolution will ensure that if there is an ability in its bar that it can use, it will use that. It will consequently allow you to focus on the boss mechanics and other things such as prayer switching or switches more easily. However, there's some disadvantages, unfortunately. The disadvantages are you have less control over abilities, and it's harder to stop attacking the target, and not only that, you're not easily able to attack targets when moving. Now, at the beginning of the video, I did say that for a lot of PVMers, I do believe that Revolution is a better option than full manual. I'm going to explain why now over 3 major points. So the most important reason I believe Revolution is better for most PVMers than full manual is that I believe Revolution is better for allowing you to focus on dealing with the mechanics correctly. And in my opinion, it is far more important to deal with the mechanics correctly than it is to have better DPS rotations, because many people who PVM already have pretty decent DPS rotations, but they struggle because the mechanics make it difficult to actually do the DPS rotation. Another important point about Revolution is actually that many of its disadvantages have easy solutions that anyone could do. I will cover them right now. The first thing I'd like to address is actually Revolution making it hard to control your abilities properly. All you need to do is, when global cooldown gets up, you use the ability you would like to use instead of what Revolution would choose, and if you do it on the tick that your global cooldown is up, you will use that ability instead of Revolution. Now, if you don't do it on time like this, then sometimes your ability won't go off in time, but that's not actually even that big of a deal, because if you were using full manual, you would have missed a tick or two of even being able to do an ability instead. Another thing to note is it's very easy to actually get off of a target using Revolution. All you have to do is click anywhere that is not the target you're fighting and under you. You just have to click anywhere else and your character will immediately stop attacking the target. Finally, you can move using Revolution the same way you would move using full manual with attacking. So you just click on the target, and then you just move around. But you have to use ability and then click the same way you would with full manual, and that's going to easily allow you to move around and attack at the same time. Finally, most full manual rotations are not perfect, nor are most Revolution rotations of the same level that bad. It's important to not compare an idealized full manual setup and rotation to a bad Revolution setup and rotation, because I do not believe, and I don't think anyone else would believe, that that is a fair comparison. Switching to full manual is not going to guarantee a big DPS increase. If you get better at full manual than you were with Revolution, then you're going to have a big DPS increase. But if you got to the skill level you had with Revolution, but instead you were using full manual, you're basically going to have the same DPS, in my opinion. In the end, I believe that you can actually get very, very good using Revolution. Now, I get that full manual will probably be ultimately more optimized than Revolution, but there is very, very few things that you using Revolution is actually going to prevent you from doing at a high level. And you can continue to improve things using Revolution by adding more manual inputs in adding in more switches, or many other things that will be a much bigger improvement to your DPS than switching from Revolution to full manual. Now, if you already are very good at using full manual, then I'm not going to recommend you switch back to Revolution, because I don't actually believe that is a real improvement for you. But I do want to caution anyone who is thinking of switching from Revolution to full manual against actually doing so without actually knowing what is going to change. Thank you for watching the video, if you've made it this far. I do legitimately believe that there is definitely a lot of use in learning PVM on Revolution. You can always switch to full manual later, but I definitely do not believe that it is as terrible to use as some people believe it is. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you disagree with something I said, that's fine. You can leave it down below in the comments, but otherwise, I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoyed it or learned something. Have a good one.